Hello students, we'll start with the next headings, synapses, next synapses, headings, events in sexual reproduction. So all the sexual reproducing organisms have three events. The first one is called as pre-fertilization. The meaning of pre-fertilization. So here, the fertilization takes place before the fertilization. What all the activities takes place, they are called as pre-fertilization. So here, before the fertilization, here the gametes are synthesized and gametes to be transferred, hence it is called as pre-fertilization. So gametogenesis and gamete transfer comes under pre-fertilization, and the second one is called as fertilization. The meaning of fertilization here, the fusion of gametes takes place. The male gamete and female gamete fuse to form a zygote. That stages or that event comes under fertilization. And the third one is called as post-fertilization. The meaning of post-fertilization, after the fertilization, what are the events takes place? For that we use the word post-fertilization. Here, the zygote is leading to the formation of embryo, and this embryo is giving rise to a seed, fruit. All these activities comes under post-fertilization. So we talk one after the other: pre-fertilization, fertilization, and post-fertilization. So we start with pre-fertilization. In pre-fertilization, the first one is called as gametogenesis. So here, the words are important for your NEET. Gametogenesis are nothing but the synthesis of gametes. Formation of gametes is called gametogenesis. So, the sexually reproducing organisms, they start synthesizing the male gametes and female gametes. If both the gametes are similar, we use the word isogamatic. Both the gametes are similar, we use the word isogamatic, or we use the word homogamatic. Here, the gametes are similar. This we can notice in some of the algae. So, in algae, these gametes are, we can't represent male or female because both the gametes are similar. These gametes are fused together to form a zygote. Hence, these gametes are similar. We use the word isogamatic. Whereas in some of the others, organisms, we use the word anisogamatic. Anisogamatic. Or it is also called as heterogamatic. It is called heterogamatic. Here, the gametes will be dissimilar. The gametes will not be similar. The male gamete is different, female gamete is different. Or we say one of the female gamete is bigger. This is called as female gamete. Agarova, this is bigger. Whereas the male gamete called as sperm is smaller. Such type of different types, bigger and smaller gametes may be present, or we use the word the gamete is bigger. This is called as agarova, female gamete, and the other one is called as sperm. This is called as a male gamete. Like this, different types of gametes are being present. In this, we use the word oogamy. The word oogamy, here the female gamete is bigger and non-motile. I am repeating it. In oogamy, the female gamete is bigger and non-motile. The male gamete is smaller and motile. This gamete fuses to form a zygote, and this is called as oogamy. Whereas we go for higher organisms. We take with higher organisms like higher plants and higher animals. So in higher plants, the male gametes are always called as pollen grain. So, androecium stamens, they produces pollen grains. So, pollen grains are also called as male gametes. Whereas in a female plant called as female sex organ called as gynoecium or pistil, they start producing the female gametes called as ovule. Female gamete, ovule. So, the pollen grain and ovule is fused in the higher plants. When we go for animals, higher animals, the male gametes are called as sperm, the female gamete is called as egg or ova. Now, in higher organisms, the gamete synthesizing cell is called as myocyte. So, in a higher organisms, the gametes are synthesized from one particular cell. They are called as gamete mother cell or they are called as myocyte. So, these myocyte cells are always diploid. The myocyte cells are always diploid. They start producing haploid gametes. We'll go for some of the examples of myocyte cells. So, I was talking with a myocyte. Myocyte is nothing but gamete mother cell. The gamete mother cell produces gametes. So, the gametes are always haploid. Myocyte cells are always diploid. So, I am giving you some of the examples of plants and animals which are most important for your need. Chromosome numbers with myocyte cell. What are the chromosome numbers? And gametes, what are those? So, one of the examples in the plant, Mucor himalis. Mucor himalis is the bread mound which has 2n is equal to 2 and n is equal to 1. Whereas the second example, Pisum sativum. This is a pea plant, P, which has 2n is equal to 14 and n is equal to 7. Next, Raphanus sativum. This is commonly called as radish. Radish has a chromosome, myocyte chromosome number, 2n is equal to 18 and n is equal to 9. Helianthus anus, this is called a sunflower. In this sunflower, the myocyte number is 2n is equal to 34 and n is equal to 17. Whereas the highest chromosome number is present in Ophioclasm reticulatum. This is one of the pteridophyte plant commonly called as Ophioclasm. This Ophioclasm in myocyte, one particular cell which has 2n is equal to 1260. Each cell will have 1260 chromosomes. So this is a huge chromosome numbers have been present and n is equal to 630. Like this, in your NEET exams they'll ask the least or the maximum chromosome numbers or another one. Even I have given you a lot of examples in your regular classes or regular videos. I have given you more, you can refer that also. We'll go for the animal examples. Ascaris megalocepha. This is commonly called as roundworm. In this animal roundworm, the chromosome number is least, which has 2n is equal to 2, where n is equal to 1. The second example is called as Drosophila melanogaster. So this is commonly called as fruit fly, or we use the word Cinderella of genetics because lot of genetic work is done on the fruit fly Drosophila melanogaster, which has chromosome number 8 in a myocyte cell and n is equal to 4 in the gametes. Next, Felis catis. This is commonly called as cat, which has chromosome number 38 and n is equal to 19. Equus carabis. This is commonly called as horse. In horse, the chromosome number of a myocyte cell is 66 and n is equal to 33. Raphelocera, this is commonly called as a butterfly. This has 2n is equal to 380 and n is equal to 90. Like this, there are many number of examples are there that should be remembered for your NEET exam. We will go for the next one. So, we are going for the next one called as gametes transfer. So, the meaning of gamete transfer, it is nothing but the transfer of a male gamete towards the female gamete, or it is the transfer of a male gamete towards the female plant for the sake of fertilization. So once an individual produces gametes, this gametes to be transferred from male to the female for the sake of fertilization. For that we use the word gamete transfers. So in gamete transfers, we have different types of gamete transfers. For example, when you take a male gamete, in majority of the cases, the male gamete is smaller and it has a capacity of motility. So, in majority of the cases, not in all, so we said male gamete will be smaller and it has a capacity of motility. The meaning of motility, they can move. That is called as motility. Whereas the female gamete, majority of the cases, it is larger. It is bigger or larger, and this is usually non-motile. Non-motile means they cannot move. So, in majority of the cases, the male gamete is transferred to the female for the sake of fertilization. So, for that we go for gamete transformation. So, when we go for some of the examples like unisexual plants. In unisexual plants, the male plant will be different, female plant will be different. So when you take a unisexual plant called as male plant, the male plant is usually called as staminate. The male plant is called as staminate. They produces pollen grains. These pollen grains are being transferred by different agents. It may be wind or it may be different like water or biotic or abiotic factors helps in the transfer of pollen grains from one to the another. Whereas the female plant is always called as pistillate. The female plant is called as pistillate. This produces the female gamete called as egg or ova. When the pollen grains from the male plant falls on the ovule and they fuse together to form zygote. Where some of the bisexual plants, the plant, one single plant may have unisexual flowers, or in a same flower both the sexes may be present. One flower has both the sexes, male androecium, as well as a female called as gynoecium. Both are present in the same flower. They are called as bisexual. So in bisexual, they always help in self-fertilization. So here, normally in a bisexual, they help in self-fertilization. That is nothing but the same pollen grains falls on the same stigma to give rise to fertilization. So this is called as self-fertilization. Whereas in a unisexual, they always prefer cross-fertilization. Cross-fertilization, because here male plant is different, female plant is different. Here the transfer takes place, so it is called as a cross-fertilization, whereas here it undergoes self-fertilization. This is nothing but the gamete transfer. Here. Now we go for the next study. So we'll start with the next study called as fertilization. The meaning of fertilization, it is the fusion of gametes. It is the fusion of male gamete and a female gamete which leads to the formation of a zygote is called as fertilization. Here the fusion of male and female gametes or two different gametes are fused is called as fertilization. Here we use the word syngamy. The word syngamy, fertilization may be called as syngamy. Here, the word syngamy, fusion of similar type of gametes. Here, the word similar species gametes have been fused, hence we use the word syngamy. Fusion of similar type of gametes is called as syngamy. Here, even the fertilization may be called as amphimixis. It is even called as amphimixis. The word amphimixis, it is nothing but the fusion of pronucleus of male. Fusion of pronucleus of a male and pronucleus of a female is called as amphimixis. I repeat this. Amphimixis may be called as pronucleus of a male, pronucleus of a female is fused together to form amphimixis. This is called fertilization. Now, we'll step into two types of fertilizations. One is called as external fertilization and internal fertilization. So, first one is external fertilization. The meaning of external fertilization, the fusion of gametes has taken place outside the female body in the water. I repeat this. The fertilization takes place outside. The meaning of it, the fertilization or the fusion of gametes takes place outside the female body in the water. For that we use the word external fertilization. We can see frog, fish. Now thus there is a presence of external fertilization. And in external fertilization, the gametes produced will be very more in number, because many of the gametes will be wasted. They never fuse. So many of other animals may come and eat off the gametes. So the fertilization may not take place. So the gametes produced here will be more in number, and lot of gametes will also be wasted without fertilization also. Now we'll go for internal fertilization. So, internal fertilization means the fusion of gametes takes place inside the female body or inside the female uterus or inside the female individual. The male gamete and female gamete is fused. For that we use the word internal fertilization. Fusion takes place inside. Hence it is called as internal fertilization. Monkeys, mammals including man can be called as internal fertilization. Now, we'll take an example. Animals have internal and external fertilization. When we go for a plants, when we take about the plants, in higher plants, the plant may be unisexual or bisexual, they undergo fertilization. Whereas if it is a unisexual, it undergoes cross fertilization. Whereas the plant is bisexual, it always undergoes self-pollination. Some of the bisexual also undergoes cross fertilization. Now, here in a plant, they produces a male gamete. The male gamete called as pollen grain. The pollen grain has inner layer called as intine and outer layer called as exine. So, exine and inner called as intine. So, this pollen grain from the intine, it produces pollen tube. It produces pollen tube. So before this, androecium produces male gametes called as pollen grains. These pollen grains are shed or thrown in 2-cell stage or 3-cell stage. Whereas 2-cell stage, one pollen grain one of the pollen grain has a bigger cell, and this bigger cell is called as vegetative cell. Whereas the smaller cell is always called as generative cell. Vegetative cell, and the smaller is called as generative cell. So the pollen grain is thrown at two cell stage. This is two cell stage. When the generative cell nucleus, divides to give rise to two male gametes. This is called as male gametes. These two male gametes starts entering in the pollen tube. These two male gametes, they start entering in the pollen tube, and this pollen tube, as it enters, this goes and fuses with the ovule. So it is thrown at three cell stage. This is called as three cell stage, where it has two male gametes. It is called as three cell stage. Only when vegetative cell and a generative cell, they are called as two cell stage. Whereas in a female gamete, when we go for a ovule, there is a presence of nucellus, embryo sac, synergids, egg cell, antipodal cells, and we call integuments. This is the structure of ovule. So these are called as integuments. This is called as a micropyle, and this is called as chalaza. This is called embryo sac. So when we use a three cells, these three cells are called as antipodal cells. When we use the word two cells, they are called as synergids, and one cell called as egg cell. And at the center, there is a presence of central cell, or we use a word secondary nucleus or polar nucleus. Polar, secondary nucleus, or central cell. This is the structure of ovule. Once the pollen grain is thrown out, this pollen grain carried by the wind, and or by one of the agents comes and reaches the ovule. Once the pollen grain reaches here through the micropyle, through the pollen tube, one of the male gamete, I am repeating it, when a pollen grain reaches the micropyle, one of the male gamete fuses with the egg cell. One of the male gamete fuses with the egg cell. This is called fertilization. And one more male gamete. One pollen male gamete fuses with the egg cell, fertilization. One more male gamete fuses with a secondary nucleus. Or polar nucleus, and this is called double fertilization. So, in the higher plants, two fertilizations takes place, hence it is usually called as double fertilization. One fertilization with the egg cell and the other fertilization with a secondary nucleus, hence it is called double fertilization. Now we start with the next study called as post-fertilization. The meaning of post-fertilization, after fertilization, what all the events takes place is called as post-fertilization. Here, we are going to discuss with the two words. One is called as a zygote. Two words. We are going to discuss with the two words. One is called as zygote and the other one is called as embryo. So here, first, the word zygote, the fusion of a male gamete and female gamete leads to the formation of a zygote. They are called as zygote. So here, the zygotes are followed by the fusion of male and female gametes. Here, as we know, the meiocyte, gamete mother cell is diploid and they undergo meiosis to produce gametes. So these gametes are haploid. So this haploid gametes fuse to form zygote. And look at this. The meiocyte are nothing but gamete mother cell. Gamete mother cell undergoes meiosis to produce gametes. Gametes are haploid. The fusion of gametes leads to the formation of zygote. So here the zygote which may be produced by the two different parents. This is one. Now, in plants, the plant body, some of the plant body will have the presence of haploid. I repeat this. Some of the plant bodies will have haploid plant bodies. This haploid plant bodies undergoes mitosis. Haploid plant body undergoes mitosis to produce haploid gametes. This is called as haplobiontic life cycle. So here we use the word, the plant body is haploid, the gametes are all haploid, so it is called as haplobiontic life cycle. Whereas some of the plants which are diploid, as they are diploid, they produce haploid gametes by meiosis. The plant body is diploid, they produce haploid gametes by meiosis. So here we use the word, this gametes again fuse to form a zygote, hence it is called as diplobiontic life cycle. I repeat this, the plant body is diploid, undergoes meiosis to produce haploid gametes. Haploid gametes fuse to form zygote. The zygote is again diploid, hence it is called as diplobiontic life cycle. In some plants, diplobiontic life cycle is also present. Diplobiontic life cycle is also present. So here, haploid plants, they fuse together to form a diploid individuals, hence it is called as haplodiploid life cycles are present. So this is about zygote. Now, we'll step into the next word, embryo. Now we start with embryogenesis. The meaning of embryogenesis, it is the synthesis of embryo. Formation of embryo is called as embryogenesis. Here, the male gamete and female gamete is fused to form zygote. This zygote undergoes repeated mitotic divisions to produce embryo. Embryo is nothing but a ball of cells or mass of cells is called as embryo. Ball of cells or mass of cells is called as embryo. This embryo is having the presence of two parts. Embryo has two parts. One is called as radicle, which gives rise to root system. One is called as plumule, which gives rise to shoot system. So this is one. Next, the ovules will be developed into seed. Yes, this is important. Remember, the ovules develop into a seed. The seed has two layers. the outermost layer of a seed is called as testa. The innermost layer of a seed is called as tegmen. It is called as tegmen. Testa and tegmen is called as seed. Next, the ovary. The ovary is always developed into. The ovary is always developed into a fruit. The ovary is developing into a fruit. There are two types of fruits. One is called as true fruits. True fruits. The fruits which are developed from the ovary, they are called as true fruits. We are talking about one of the example, mango. The second one is called as false fruits. So, in a false fruits, other than the ovary, for example, thalamus is developing into a fruit, that is called as false fruit. Here, thalamus. Thalamus is giving rise to a fruit, hence it is called as false fruit. Next. So, we'll start with Parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis is nothing but virgin birth. Here, without the fertilization, the egg ones have been produced. Here, either one of the gamete for an egg cell is developing into male or female without the fertilization, hence it is called as parthenogenesis. The young ones are called parthenodes. Parthenodes. Young ones are called parthenodes. Here, there are two types under this natural parthenogenesis. Here, natural means it is occurring naturally without any induced. In this, three organotochy, it is called as haploid parthenogenesis. Here, the haploid egg is developing into haploid individuals. Here, the haploid egg directly gives rise to haploid individuals. This can be noticed in the drones of honeybees, birds, and some of the turkeys. There is a presence of organotochy. The second one is thyrotochy or diploid parthenogenesis. Here the diploid egg is developing into diploid individuals, and example, grasshopper and moths. Diploid egg without the male gamete, the diploid egg directly gives rise to diploid individuals. Amphitochy. Here the egg is giving rise to any individual, either it may be male sex or female sex. The egg is developing into male or female of any sex. Example is amphibians. These are called as natural parthenogenesis. Whereas artificial parthenogenesis is nothing but induced.